into the new growth of the tree. If it was needle cast, a needle something or other that is back on the older needles, it would be far less significant. But what is happening to her tree would be my best guess is that the fungal bodies are getting in, they're killing those tips that, and perhaps not all of them, but that's why it shows as thinning rather than dying. But my trees have, even though they have thinned at the bottom, are now affected way up in the top, and up in the top now is 30-some feet. That should be the drier area, and yet I think the weather circumstances last year were just such that the spores were in the air, the humidity was high, trees were wet, and, well, a near knockout punch. Now, I don't know but what they will be on the ground as firewood or other next year at this time when we speak about it. But I hope that is not what she has. Now, as to what to do about it, there are a couple of fungicides, and I'm going to stay out of the name game on those because those things change so rapidly that only a good arborist keeping up with spray schedules and recommendations can kind of keep up and follow. It is a preventive process, same as on roses with black spot, in terms you have to stop the disease from getting started, so to speak, rather than try to cure it. There doesn't seem to be a cure. So, right now, for this year, it is all but, if not in fact, too late to put on the protective coating. Next year, and I can't tell you exactly when, but I'm going to say early May, late April, should be the first application of spray, and it will be the kind of thing that if the trees are tall at all, it should be done by an arborist. They need to go into those trees with almost a mist well, you would actually see it if you're looking toward the sun. You'd see a mist almost like a fog that gets up in there and gets around the needles, in the crotches of the branches, and etc., and try to stop the disease from getting worse. I simply hope that she doesn't have to go back to prayer because it really is not effective in this case, other than you hope above all else that it doesn't take out a beautiful tree of 20 years of age. But it can, and it does.
Linda, thanks so much for the call this morning, or for the email. Thanks very much. Again, fred@planttalkradio.com is our email address. Helen wrote in, and she says, I purchased a peony about 3 to 4 weeks ago at a good nursery in my area. Since I've had it home, the leaves are getting brown and dry. I'm afraid they're going to drop off. The attached tag recommends full sun. I have it in partial sun and shade area. What can I do to save this beautiful plant from dying?
Well, without seeing it, it's awfully hard to tell. A peony is a plant, however, when we talk about picking the right site earlier in the program, it's one that does need that. Now, let's start with the fact that it's okay, without a doubt, that it's in partial sun. Just for definition's sake, most of the time, 6 hours of sun is considered a full day as far as plant needs are concerned. Then it's whether the sun is in the morning or the afternoon, midday, can have some bearing on individual plant situations. The plant also needs good drainage. Now, not perfect. It's not terribly fussy. At the same time that you should watch, as long as they're not standing in a puddle so that they rot out below ground, it shouldn't be much of a problem. As far as her plant, it may just not have gotten started out right. Then there is the possibility, and this is one of the things, Helen, that is difficult to handle in a way. You may have had so much interest in that plant that in keeping it watered, you may have put on too much water too often. That is unless you know the plant is in really, really heavy soil, thick clay, etc., then I'm going to suggest maybe you need to back off on the water, and it may even be too late. But let's start with you're using an unpainted dowel rod. Mine happens to be about a ½ inch in diameter. It's open wood, probably poplar or pine, and it will imbibe water as you stick it in the ground. I'm going to bet that when she puts that in the ground 4 inches deep, and just don't wiggle it around. Just put it in, give it a count of 10, pull it back straight out. I'm going to bet that stick is going to be showing some pretty dark wood, having imbibed some water. It's going to have wet soil sticking to it and so on, because that's one of the first things I think of as killing a peony or causing it to falter, and it may be just faltering. I don't know as I would dig it up yet, but the chances are when people take too much interest in a plant, the tendency where their sainted grandmother and mother and so on have always said plants need water, no question about that being very true, but you can drown the poor things too, especially in a heavier soil. So Helen, I don't know what to tell you to do at this point other than wait and see, or if you remember in planting it that it was in a fairly dense soil, you might take a chance even at this moment in time in an evening so it's cooler, if that should happen as we come into summer. Dig it up and replant it. Set it a little higher. A peony should be planted so that the eye or bud or the point at which the new growth comes from should never be more than 1 inch below the soil surface. A little higher is even better. And be sure there's just excellent drainage under it, which is sometimes hard to achieve, but that's what may have to happen, Helen.
Bill wrote in to us, and he says, I purchased an older home with existing boxwood shrubs. Now, the previous owner wasn't able to take care of them. The boxwoods had dead wood and were overgrown. I removed the dead wood and thinned and cut back the shrubs. I need suggestions on what fertilizer to use or soil conditioning, anything that would help bring these plants back to full health.
Okay. In that we can't see them, I have to say that I'm not absolutely certain of my answers. But a boxwood that gets plenty of sun, which would again be up toward that 6 hours a day, or even high ambient light, because I've used them under big silver maples and oaks and things that are limbed up 20 feet, cast a shadow, but there's a bit of light, a good bit of light that comes in underneath those trees, and boxwood do fine. They will also take the rip-roaring sun all the time, too. Now, one of the things I know to be best for a boxwood is to be mulched. The roots are usually pretty high in the ground. They're a fibrous root. The mulch will help cool the soil, help keep moisture in that upper range at least a little longer, and so on. The fact that he has taken the dead wood out is good. One of the things that can be problematic in boxwood is a little, my mind just went blank. It causes the leaves to cup, just like the end of a spoon. It is an insect. It's in deep in the tissue. It's probably without management at this moment in time, but he should use a good systemic insecticide in the fall, October, or in March, or if the plants are in really bad condition, maybe both. It is absorbed through the tissue of the plant, roots and the trunk and so on, and then kills this little beggar from the inside, so that it doesn't get going. I am painfully aware of that because I didn't get mine treated last year, and 5, 8, maybe 10% of the leaves are cupped, which it isn't a big deal as far as the plant's health is concerned yet. But if I would let that go another year, it could be a major disaster. So, Bill, fertilization would be sparingly. I don't know of any reason why you couldn't fertilize lightly yet and call it enough. Now, by that meaning, I would use a dry fertilizer. Unless the plants are desperate, then you can go to a water-soluble. Use a dry fertilizer. Whatever the rate they tell you to put down per square feet, cut it in half at this point in time. Then keep the plants moist through the summer. Every 2 to 3 weeks, a thorough soaking, and they should get along and start to reshape. Then good growth in the fall, next spring, with treatment for the insect and et cetera, should be off and roaring for you.
If you missed Fred, you can always go to our website, planttalkradio.com, and we have all of our old shows on there. Or you can go to iTunes and subscribe to our podcast, and you'll get those every week. So you can do it a couple of different ways and listen to our old shows. More from Fred Hauer, the Ohio nurseryman, coming up next on Plant Talk. Stick with us.
This summer at Franklin Park Conservatory and Botanical Gardens, the gardens are in full color. Welcome its tropical and native butterflies in flight in the indoor Pacific Island Water Garden. View the conservatory's bonsai collection and experience the exhibition Origami in the Garden. Find details at fpconservatory.org.
And welcome back to the program. Mark News here alongside Fred Hauer, the Ohio nurseryman. And Fred, we had another email question. This came from Tom, and he says, what can you tell me about fragrant sumac? And then he put in little parentheses, Rus aromatica.
Uh-huh.
He says, my sister in Vermont has one, and it's absolutely beautiful. It has berries, and then in the fall it gets red leaves. Will it do well here in Ohio?
Yes. Now, that's a definitive yes. It's a plant that it's much like clothing. In the plant world, things go out of favor just because new things come along and take the spotlight for a while. But Rus aromatica, or let's just say its cousin, I happen to have that plant as the low-grow type of sumac under a pine in my own yard. A good, tough old plant. It is not particularly great in flower. There is a flower. It's not uninteresting, but it's certainly not the attraction. The little arrowhead-shaped or kind of arrowhead-shaped leaves are on the shiny side, not brilliant, but at the same time some shine. They're a thick, durable leaf. They look good the whole summer long, and as he mentioned, they're a beautiful burgundy in the fall time. The standard Rus aromatica is a 6 to 8 foot grower over time. Then the Grolo sumac, right now mine has some age on it, but it has gotten up to approximately 3 feet tall, fairly broad, and does not get much taller. It kind of layers out on top of itself. So yes, a great plant. The one disappointment may be, or difficulty, may be trying to find the rascal. It's a bit like, as I started to mention, women's and men's clothing. Men's striped suits, solid colors. Men's 2-button, 3-button, on and on and on. Women's hemlines up and down, etc. That's just exactly how I look at this business of plant availability. But Rus sumac is definitely a plant for him to use. I think it can be used about every place except in the bottom of a puddle. It takes full sun. It'll take a significant amount of shade. I know of it to be in I'm going to call it a parking island. It's blacktop and concrete all the way around, and the plant is just as durable as it can be. Matter of fact, now that it has gotten, I think, probably 3 years of growth on it, if I remember right, it doesn't matter, but it's thick enough now that people would not want to try to walk through it. It's going to stop them. So I would say go for it, and good luck finding it. It is available. I just could not tell you at the moment how or where. One of the things to do is ask your garden center dealer or nurseryman to put it on the next order for next spring or this fall or whatever, because I don't think I've seen it in a garden store retail setting for a while. But they're not rare. They're just a little hard to find at the moment.
And once again, our toll-free number, 1-866-752-6882. That's 1-866-PLANT-TALK with 2 T's. And, Fred, it's interesting that you and I have talked about this in the past, about how plants sort of come and go, like with the fashion, like everything else. And we had talked earlier, you and I, about the beautyberry, which is you and I saw one somewhere, and I said, boy, I just have to have that. And you said, that's a good old plant, it's been around forever and that kind of thing. And then, sure enough, I went to every garden store in town, couldn't find it.
Well, Mark, that is an unfortunate truth. And I know why, from a commercial standpoint, the garden centers can't carry everything, period. But things like the sumac that we just spoke of, the beautyberry, and so on, are still available. You may have to kind of special order them as such. You might even have to go to catalogs. But on catalog buying, which I'm not opposed to, you may have to start with small plants that can be mailed and so on. But I know that if you can get in tight with your dealer, And I know when they place another order at one of the, multi-plant grower types, they can bring in a few for you. They might even be well advised to bring in a couple dozen of them. Let people see what they are, even though they're not high in the favor right now. But both are fantastic plants for